Hello friends, in this video tutorial we are going to see the concept of CDC transformation. CDC transformation can be used to load incremental data. SCD, that is slowly changing dimension, was also used for loading data, but it compared all the data, whereas if we use CDC it will only take into consideration the incremental data. So for that we need to configure our database. So let us enable CDC on the database. Now let us create a table, the source table, and let us enable the source table for CDC, that is change data capture. Now once the source table has been enabled, we have also inserted two new records. This is our source database. So we can see that in the source table there are two records, and there is a new table with prefix of DBO underscore and suffix of underscore CT created, which is a system table created for maintaining the changes with respect to the change data capture on the table for which you have enabled the CDC. So for the CT table also there are two new rows, for one for change and another for caps. Now the type of rows is indicating two, which means they are insertions. One is for deletion, two is for insertions, 3 and 4 are for recording the changes, the updates. 3 stands for old record, 4 stands for new record for updates. Now in our destination database, we have created one table having a similar data structure with two more columns, that is ETL start date and ETL end date. This table we have named as dim underscore product underscore table. Now let us start our initial load, that is the first time load, in which we will load the full data that is there in the transaction table. Right? So we need to have CDC control task. First one to mark the start of the initial load, and last one to mark the end of the initial load. And between these two tasks, we will have our data flow task, which will transfer our data from source to destination. So let us configure the CDC control task. Now the CDC control task will require to store some information in the database to maintain its state. For that we are providing the database connection to it. Now this is the variable CDC status that will be used to maintain the state, and we also need to give it a table to store the data. So let us create a new table for it. So CDC data will be stored in our new table and the new variable that we have provided. Now similarly, let us configure the CDC control task to mark the end of the initial load. Hence we have selected the similar options from the drop down list. So we will store our data in CDC underscore states table. Now for the data flow part, let us take a OLEDB source and a OLEDB destination, but we will require two more columns. For that, let us take a derived column. Let us provide the database connection to the source object, that is OLEDB source object. So the table will be OLTP underscore product underscore table. So columns are okay. Now let us add two new columns, ETL underscore start underscore date, which will have the current date and time, and ETL underscore end underscore date, which will also have the current date and time to indicate when the record was created and updated. Now let us provide database connection for our destination object. So dim underscore product underscore table is our dimension table. So as we can see, the columns are mapping correctly. Now we are ready with our initial load. So we are just rechecking the configurations. They are correct. So now let us execute the initial load package. And it has run successfully, and it has transferred those two records from our source to the destination table. So let us go to our destination table. So there are two records present now. And these have been transferred by our package. Also, on the source part, there are two records in the source table. Also, the two records in the underscore cd table are as it is. And there is a now new record indicating initial load end for the CDC underscore state table. Now let us configure our incremental loads. For that, let us copy paste our package. Let us rename it to CDC underscore incremental underscore load. Now let us rename the CDC control task. Let us configure the CDC control task. This time we'll have to select get processing range. And for the end, we will have to select mark processed range. Now we are going to read the data through CDC source instead of OLEDB source. Let us configure our CDC source. Let us specify the table which has been configured for CDC, that is change data capture. And let us mark only net changes for which we are interested. Now, this output of CDC source has to go into CDC splitter because there will be three types of records. New insertions will be there, new updations will be there, and some deletions may also be there. So it will have three outputs. So let us provide the first output of insertion to our existing objects. So insertion output is given to derived column, which will add two more columns of ETL start date and ETL end date. And that data will be saved through our OLEDB destination object. So the column mappings are correct, so it will save our records. Now let us do something for the updated records also. So for that, let us add a OLEDB command object. Let us configure OLEDB command object. So updated output will come to this particular object. Now we'll have to specify the database to which this will connect. So it will be the destination database. So this is our update statement, which will update all the columns with the help of product ID in the where clause. So Product ID is the last parameter in the where clause. So accordingly, let us configure our column mappings. So last parameter 5 is product ID. And let us map other columns too. So as now all the columns have been configured or mapped, let us save it. Now let us go back to our database. So there are two records in our destination table. Let us go to our source table. Let us add a new row for toothpaste. Let us update the row for caps. Let us mark it as updated caps. So we have done one new insertion and one updation. So now the changes are there in our source table. Also there are some new records in the underscore CT table which is maintaining our changes. So there is a record for chain. For caps there are now 3 records. For toothpaste there is 1 record indicating insertion. State is still initial load end. Now let us run our package. But before that, let us add data viewers so that we can come to know at runtime what data is passing through our data flows. So let us run our package. Let us run it. So we can see now our data viewer is showing us the records that are going from source to destination, and they are the new records or they are the updated records. Now let us verify the same in database. So in the destination table, now all changes are there. The updated record is also there and newly inserted record is also there. So our CDC incremental load package has transferred all the changes from source table to the destination table.